This is how we install Docker and uh, Docker desktop. This is how we install Docker desktop, and we run, we build images, we run container, we inspect, and we inspect the image, and we check the logs of the container, and we can expose it to the uh, external world by using a port number and an IP, and we can access that application which is running inside the container. And all we have done using Docker desktop. It's pretty easy then compared to the actual Docker. Okay, so this is how we do for Windows, and if you want to do it for Linux, you can do it in the same way. Click on install on Linux and follow the same procedure: Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and here you have to give some commands, and either you can use with commands or you can just download and see. This is how it looks, your Ubuntu user interface, Ubuntu desktop, and inside that you can install your Docker desktop and you can run the same. It's not a big deal. Okay, even for the Mac OS you can do the same thing, but the problem here is when you work on your servers, all servers will not have this graphical user interface option. They will not have application level, they will not have graphics application to view all those things. It's a simple console type servers. Those are all console type instances. You can just use a command line interface, CLI. You can use a shell, not more than that. So what you can do in that case, you have a second option for to install, that is your Docker engine. You see, just scroll down a bit, you will find Docker engine. Yeah, I think now it's clear. Docker engine. So now let me click on Docker engine and click on overview. So what is Docker engine? A Docker engine is an open source containerization technology for building and containerizing your applications. A Docker engine acts as a client server application with, so what it consists of, it consists of a server with a long running daemon process. We call this as a dockered. It consists of a server with a long running daemon process. Okay, anyway, it's a client server based application, so it consists of a server which is a dockered, or we can say it as a Docker engine, and it will have a client. A command line interface is our client, that is Docker. We say it as a Docker, and in between, to connect this client and a server, we require something. What is that? That is API, application programming interface. So APIs which specify the interfaces that program can use to talk to and instruct the Docker daemon. So this is the Docker daemon. The Docker daemon name is dockered, and our command line interface, the client is Docker, and API is the one which makes the connection possible between our Docker and Dockered. Our client is our Docker, and then Docker engine is our server. Basically, who is the client here? I will be the client, you will be the client, because you are the one who is giving the commands to the server. Okay, so we will give that commands through this Docker client, the command line interface, and that will be passed through API to server. That's how this Docker works. Anyway, we are going to see the Docker architecture in our slides also, but I just want to give you a glimpse of it, how exactly it works. A client and server type architecture. Now let me click on install Docker engine. Here you have various sections. First section is installation Docker engine. Then use persistent data with Docker container. Here you can find how to use persistent data with Docker container. That's attaching the volumes to your Docker container. It could be bind mount, or it could be volume binding, whatever it could be. So that's what. And here you will find networking, how to manage network connection between containers, between each container, how can you manage. And here learn how to view and read container logs, and then tidy up and unused resources. Tidy up, that's what I'm saying, it's a cleaning up or housekeeping. And here if you want to do some changes, 12 into the configuration options of the Docker daemon. And here these are deprecated features. So anyway, so the first five are important for us. We will look into one by one whenever we need to do our examples. I will show you, and what commands I'm using from here, that also I will explain in that. So now let's begin with installation of Docker engine. So click on installation of Docker engine. So it has taken us to Docker engine installation overview. So you have three types of OSs, three types of platforms. One is, okay, that's Docker desktop. Yeah, here you could find server. Docker provides .deb and .rpm packages from the following Linux distributions and architectures. So CentOS, Debian, Fedora, Raspbian, RHEL, SLS, Ubuntu, and binaries. Okay, so I'm gonna go with, you have different tabs. If you use CentOS machine, then you have to use a different commands. Debian different, Fedora different, Red Hat Enterprise Linux is different, SLES is different. So I will go with the Ubuntu, or else simply you can download the binaries. You can simply install Docker engine from binaries. You download the binary file and place it in a proper directory and you can execute it. But this is not the safest method to use. So yeah, see, you see here tar, you will get a package, a tar package. Then you have to follow this sudo docker. You have to create a docker. So I don't think it's a good idea. So let's not do this. Let's do with a proper installation method. I'll go with Ubuntu. So this is install Docker engine on Ubuntu. So prerequisites. So at least you require a 64-bit version of this Ubuntu versions. Ubuntu Bionic or Ubuntu Focal. We'll go with the Ubuntu Focal 20.04 LTS. I'll just copy this. Just a minute. Let me open a sticky note. I'd say Docker installation in Linux. Sorry, I would say Docker engine, because you have to differentiate between Docker engine and Docker desktop. So Docker engine only. We are installing Docker engine only in Linux, or I specifically mentioned Ubuntu. So for that, requirements, Ubuntu Focal 20.04 LTS. Not this. We have to go with the long-term support only. Then once it is done, the next thing is to create an EC2 instance with Ubuntu OS or Ubuntu AMI. So I'm gonna go with the Amazon Web Services EC2 instance. Okay, so once it is done, the next step, this is a first step. Then second step is to install the Docker inside the server. Then third one, validate the installation of Docker. So this is what we are going to do. So let's get into EC2 instances. So now I'm in Mumbai region. So let me click on launch instances and let's begin. So I will name it as a Docker server. Ubuntu, click on Ubuntu. So Ubuntu 22.4, no, I don't want. Ubuntu 20.04 is fine. So I'll click on Ubuntu 20.44 LTS. Then instance type T2 Micro, no, I'll go with the T2 small. No, I'll go with T2 medium. It will work a bit faster. Then let me create a key pair. If you want, you can use T2 micro also, no issue at all. I just want a EC2 instance which works way faster than micro. So that's the reason I have gone for T2 medium. You can go with T2 micro also. It is not at all an issue. So and key. Docker key is the one which we have created. So it's been created. Then scroll down. So let us edit network settings. So the name I'm gonna give for Docker SG small, and here also Docker SG and remain same as usual. For the Docker security group, the first security group rule remains same. SSH type protocol TCP port range default 122, but source type I want to access through SSH from my IP, so I will select my IP. Okay, so that is done. Okay, here I would write SSH for admin login, or to do SSH into Docker server. Okay, so then let me add one more security group here. The custom TCP will remain same and TCP protocol remains same. Port range, so it remains same, and source type I would select my IP, and here I'm going to select all traffic. Here it is, all traffic. So when we say all traffic means whatever traffic that comes, so all can be used. Okay, so that I can use this Docker for other purposes also, that we will look into that. So we have selected all traffic. So all traffic, so and we will scroll down. So let's keep it same. And storage volume, by default you will get 8 GB block. So click on launch instance. So meanwhile let's fetch the, okay, it will take a few seconds. Meanwhile we'll fetch the, so the first activity has been done. So EC2 creation of EC2 instance with Ubuntu AMI is done. So it's done. So then the next step is to logging into the Ubuntu, that Docker server, and install the Docker inside the server. That's our next activity. To do that, I need to do SSH. For that, I require key pair. I'm just waiting for the key pair. Let it come up. Okay, so let me click on downloads and take me to that folder and cut it and get into introducing containers and create new directory Docker in action. Open it and paste it here. So here I'm gonna open our git bash, maximize it. Okay, that's enough. Let me get into EC2 instance. Instance might be up and running. Yes, it's up and running. So let me click on instance ID and click on connect. Come down to the SSH client command and go to your git bash and paste it and run it. Yes, it's asking. I would say yes. So now it's done. Let me give sudo hi and clear the screen. Now it's time for installation of Docker. So let's get into the Docker installation again, or else I will do one more thing. I'll keep it on left side. I'll keep install Docker engine on right side. Fine. So both are going side by side. Yeah. So let's scroll down. More. Yeah. It's begun. So first thing to be done is set up the repository. So this is the first step. Copy this. So we are in setup the repository. We are going to do 3 steps, so that we will do it one by one. So the first activity is to set up the repository. In that, the first activity is to update the package. So update the apt package and update the apt package index and install packages to allow apt to use a repository over HTTPS. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So let's do sudo apt update this apt-get update and then install CA certificates curl GNUPG LSB release. GNUPG is for the GPG key. That's okay. We will install one by one. So in setting up the repository, our first step is to update the package index and install packages to allow apt to use a repository over HTTPS to allow apt to use to make okay, let me enter this to make apt to use HTTPS to bring different utilities. You need to install CS certificates. That's what we have done it. And LSB release. Okay, that's enough. So this has been installed, and then the second step in setting up the repository is adding. It's very important step. Add Docker's GPG key, which is official. Which is official. It's not created by you or me. So they will create the GPG key. They will take up the private key will be with them, and public key will be given to us. So what it will do? It will first create a directory inside the etc, and inside the etc apt they will create keyrings directory. Inside that they will do the curl. So curl is the utilities we have just installed. You see that on top, and then we have used fssl option, and then it will fetch the gpg key and copy it into etc apt keyrings docker.gpg. So let me copy this and paste it. So you can see that Ubuntu GPG is the one, and it is piped with sudo GPG. GPG is the tool that you have inside your system. Basically, it's to create a GPG key, nothing else. In connection with the docker.com. Okay, I will explain it clearly. For that, I need to make it bigger. Now you can see that. I will show you. This part, first one is clear, right? It's gonna create a directory keyrings. Okay, after that curl and go to this directory, sorry, go to this URL https download.docker.com. in that Linux Ubuntu GPG. So you will get the GPG from there, it will fetch it, and then you are piping it. Once it is done, then do gpg dear more option o, and here. So what is this is, this is creating a docker.gpg key. Basically this command we use, even I have used this command in creating a docker gpg, in creating a gpg key in while we are doing exercise or example in git. If you remember the github example, we have done it attaching ssh key as well as gpg key. So that's what it's happening. So here it's fetching that, and then it's connecting with that, and it is creating a gpg key in connection with the docker. Okay, so let's execute this. I think it's done. So then let me minimize it again. So, and the third step in setting up the repository is use this command to set up the repository. This is the final step. If we do this, we are going to set up the repository. So what is that repository and where we are setting up? So let me make it bigger and we'll see. So lsb release sudo t etc apt sources.list docker.list. You can find apt sources.list. That's where we are setting up. The symbols that you see is for the redirection. That's output redirection. Sorry, that's input redirection, or you can say other output redirection from one to other. Input redirection is a less than symbol. So setting up the repository is done. So now it's time to install Docker Engine. For that, again, you have to update the apt package index. So let me update the apt package index, and then give the permissions basically to use Docker GPG. So I need to give the permission to use Docker GPG. So I'm giving that permissions, and I'm updating it again after giving the permissions so that it can use docker.gpg key. Then I will go with the latest version. So of Docker CE, Docker CE CLI, container.io, Docker Compose plugin. So all I'm gonna install now. This is the third step, second step. Install Docker. First step is to set up and verify. So I'll give y. Set up the repository, and second one is install Docker Engine, containered, and Docker Compose. So now all are being installed. So ManDB database and systemmd has been installed successfully. That means our uh, Docker has also successfully been installed. So let me give history. You see that from update the app package, set up the repository. It consists of these steps, and finally we have installed it. This is how we install Docker. So now, so this part, installing the Docker inside the server, is also done. Now it's time to validate the installation of Docker. So this one we have to cross check. So let me go here and say Docker version. Yes, congrats. Docker version 20.10.23 and build 7155243. And I would say Docker help. Clearly see that you have a Docker here, and it has given all the commands that are related to Docker and all the options that are related to Docker and a Docker specific usage. This is the syntax of Docker commands. It begins with Docker, and after that you will have options, and after that you will have a command, and you have various commands in this. Let me go up. Okay, this is what the syntax of Docker. So with this we have finished validating the installation of Docker also. We have Docker has been successfully installed in our Ubuntu server.